Just after 4 a.m. on November 2nd, 2013, a man called 911 in Gwinnett County, Georgia. His voice was flat, almost casual at first. He told the dispatcher his 10-year-old daughter was dead. When officers arrived at the apartment complex in Lawrenceville, he directed them to a metal trash can sitting in the grass, just steps from the front door. Inside the can, inside a black garbage bag, they found the charred remains of a little girl. She weighed 32 pounds, the size of a toddler. Her body had been doused with accelerant and set on fire days earlier in a failed attempt to make her disappear. Later, the father would break down and tell a detective, "I'm guilty, I killed my baby." But by then it was too late. Emani Moss was already gone, starved to death over weeks, while multiple agencies had known she was in danger. This is the story of a child who should still be here. Emani Moss was 10 years old when she died in October 2013. What makes her story especially painful is not only how she died, but how many times the danger surrounding her was seen, documented, and still left unaddressed. This documentary examines not just one family's failure, but a wider system of missed opportunities that allowed a little girl to slip through the cracks. Over several years, multiple adults and institutions encountered clear warning signs about Emani's safety. Teachers noticed injuries. Police responded to reports of her running away. Child Protective Services received multiple complaints. A grandmother fought for custody after seeing the changes in her granddaughter. Each time something was recorded. Each time Emani was returned to the same environment. The question this story forces us to confront is simple but urgent. How many warnings does it take before a child is truly protected? Emani's case is not an isolated tragedy. It reveals how easily systems can become focused on procedures, paperwork, and family preservation at the expense of a child's actual safety. When reports are treated as individual incidents rather than part of a growing pattern, children like Emani pay the price. Her story asks us to look honestly at the gap between having information and acting on it with the seriousness it demands. If you are watching this and you work with children, as a teacher, a social worker, a healthcare provider, a neighbor, or a family member, this story carries a direct responsibility. If you see signs that a child may be in danger, report it. Do not assume someone else will act. Do not wait for more evidence to appear. In many places, you can contact your local Child Protective Services or national hotlines dedicated to child safety. One report, made with care, can change the course of a child's life. Emani Moss ran out of second chances. The adults around her did not. This documentary will show how a series of missed interventions led to an outcome that was preventable. It is a story about what happens when warnings exist on paper but protection never arrives in time. Most of all, it is a story that asks us to do better for the children who still have time left. Emani Moss was a gentle and bright little girl who brought a quiet warmth and kindness to everyone around her. Those who knew her remember her as someone who always tried to make others feel included and valued. She had a soft, thoughtful way about her, often humming or singing softly under her breath, while she colored or played quietly by herself. It was a small habit that showed how she found comfort in simple, everyday moments. Even as a child, Emani displayed a natural sensitivity and a genuine desire to see the people around her happy. At school, Emani was known as a helpful, polite, and kind student. Her fourth-grade teacher described her as precious and a blessing to have in the classroom.
She cried because we had these behavior sheets that we had to write on, just to keep a record, and I was going to write down that she didn't complete her homework, and she cried and cried, and I told her it would be okay.
Those type of sheets, did those go home with the child for their parents to see?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you say that the only type of schoolwork that she had trouble was just getting back to school with her homework completed?
Yes.
When we talk about what happened in the classroom and her doing her work in the classroom, was she able to perform her work and her schoolwork during the day just fine?
Yes, she was.
All right. With regard to that, was she actually, was Emani actually placed in accelerated program there at the school at Bethesda at that time?
No, not at the
Not at that time.
She was respectful without needing reminders and always said please and thank you with sincerity. Emani participated enthusiastically in class activities and was remembered as a wonderful friend. One story her teacher often recalled was how Emani once tried to befriend a classmate who was difficult with others.
She would tell me like all the cute little things, because he was, I think, about 2. He was a toddler at the time. And he would say these cute little things, and she's like, oh, Miss Neal, he said this. And her face would light up. She loved him so much and was so proud of him.
That was something that she told you just kind of in passing. It was not something that you would prompt or ask her about?
Yeah, no, she would just come out and say, he did this, he did that. And her face would light up.
During that school year, so that was between October of 2012 and then May of 2013, did you have any occasion to observe any visible injury or any type of bruising or markings to Emani during that time frame when she was in your classroom?
I did not.
She wrote a small note wishing to be friends and start fresh. Her teacher saw this as a clear example of Emani's natural kindness and her belief that everyone deserved friendship. For Emani, school felt like a safe and happy place where she could smile freely and simply be herself. When she stayed with her grandmother for several months, Emani truly flourished. She completed her homework on time, made friends easily, and spent her afternoons playing outside and laughing with family. Her grandmother often spoke about how alive, happy, and full of energy Emani seemed during that period. She ate well, slept peacefully, and showed a bright curiosity about the world. Emani made a colorful beaded keychain as a gift for her grandmother, a small but meaningful token that her grandmother still carries every day as a cherished reminder. Emani shared a special bond with her younger half-brother. She adored him and spoke about him with genuine affection. Family members recall a respectful and thoughtful child who noticed when others needed kindness and quietly tried to offer it. She wanted everyone around her to feel comfortable and at ease. During family visits, such as the last Mother's Day gathering, relatives noticed her gentle and loving presence. She brought a sense of peace and sweetness wherever she went. Even later, those who loved her continued to see the same sweet girl. She remained the child who hummed while coloring, who wanted everyone to get along, and who found happiness in small moments. At her funeral, white doves were released as a symbol of her gentle spirit. Her cousins spoke about how Emani was like a sister and wished she was now in a place without hurt. Teachers and extended family all carried memories of a polite, smiling little girl who had touched their lives in quiet but lasting ways. Emani's memory lives on through these simple details of who she was. She was a loving daughter, a kind student, a thoughtful granddaughter, and a devoted big sister. She was a child who deserved to be surrounded every day by safety, warmth, and the freedom to grow into the gentle person she was already becoming. Her story reminds us of the light she brought to those fortunate enough to know her. The danger to Emani Moss did not appear suddenly in the final months of her life. Warning signs had been visible and documented for years before the tragedy reached its conclusion. The pattern of instability began to take clear shape in March 2010, when Emani was only 6 years old. That month, Emani's stepmother struck her following an issue with schoolwork. The child confided in a school nurse that she was afraid to bring home a poor report card because she feared what might happen at home. Upon examination, the nurse discovered multiple bruises, welts, and marks across Emani's body. The injuries were significant enough that authorities became involved, and her stepmother was arrested and charged with first-degree child cruelty. Tiffany Moss eventually entered a guilty plea under Georgia's first offender program. She received 5 years of probation and was ordered to complete parenting classes. As part of the resolution, Emani was placed with her paternal grandmother, Robin Moss, for approximately 6 months. During this time with her grandmother, Emani showed clear signs of improvement. She performed better in school, completed her homework more consistently, made friends more easily, and appeared happier and more secure in her daily routine. Her grandmother later described this period as one in which Emani was genuinely thriving both emotionally and academically. For the first time in a while, Emani seemed to have the stability and support she needed to grow. Despite this progress, Emani's father fought successfully to regain custody. In the fall of 2010, Emani was returned to the home where the earlier incident had occurred. Her grandmother had argued that the environment remained unsafe and had actively sought to keep her granddaughter with her. Those efforts did not succeed. The system appeared to view the 2010 case as resolved once the legal requirements, probation, and parenting classes had been fulfilled. This decision created a troubling precedent. A child who had already experienced a substantiated incident of physical harm was returned to the same household without additional long-term safeguards or closer ongoing monitoring. The response focused primarily on completing formal steps rather than on ensuring sustained safety over time. No enhanced protective measures were implemented to address the possibility of future risk in the home. In the years that followed, Emani continued living in the same environment. The 2010 incident remained part of the official record, yet it did not appear to trigger heightened or sustained intervention when new concerns later surfaced. The early handling of the first serious warning set a pattern, in which the child was returned home and the case was considered closed, without fundamental changes to her daily circumstances or stronger protective oversight from the agencies involved. This was the hidden instability, already present in Emani's life long before the final events unfolded. A significant incident had been officially recognized by the system, yet the protective response proved temporary and limited in scope. The choice to return her to the same environment after a single period of intervention allowed the underlying conditions around her to remain unaddressed. What began as a documented moment of danger was not met with the level of ongoing protection that might have altered the difficult path that lay ahead for her. After the 2010 incident and the decision to return Emani to her father's home, the situation around her did not stabilize. Instead, new warning signs continued to appear over the following years, each one adding to a growing pattern of concern that was never fully addressed with decisive action. In July 2012, when Emani was 9 years old, she ran away from home on 2 separate occasions. During one of these incidents, she told the apartment complex manager and responding police officers that her stepmother had tied her to a chair using belts and placed her in a cold shower. Police documented the report and notified Child Protective Services. However, after the allegations were denied, no charges were filed, and Emani was returned to the same home. In another instance, she was found sleeping in bushes near a nearby apartment complex and again stated that she had run away because her stepmother was mean to her. While one officer took steps to bring the matter before a juvenile court judge, Emani remained in the household without any fundamental change to her living situation. These events represented direct disclosures from the child herself about ongoing difficulties at home. Yet each report was largely handled in isolation, rather than being connected to the earlier 2010 case already on record. No sustained protective measures, such as removal from the home or intensive monitoring, were implemented to alter her circumstances. By 2013, additional signs of increasing isolation began to surface. After the school year ended, Emani's father and stepmother decided to remove her from public school and educate her at home instead. This choice significantly reduced her contact with teachers and school staff, the very people who had previously noticed and reported concerns about her well-being. Emani's aunt expressed worry about the homeschooling plan and contacted Child Protective Services, but no meaningful follow-up or intervention resulted from the call. On August 6, 2013, just 2 months before Emani's death, an anonymous caller contacted Child Protective Services with concerns that she was being neglected and appeared thin. According to later information, the agency did not conduct an effective home visit or assessment that could have properly evaluated her condition at that time. Another opportunity to intervene passed without decisive action. Throughout these years, multiple adults and agencies had received information suggesting Emani was not safe. Teachers, police officers, relatives, and Child Protective Services had each encountered pieces of the larger picture at different moments. However, these warnings were never connected into one urgent, comprehensive assessment that could have led to stronger and more consistent protective measures. The escalation unfolded gradually but steadily. What began with a documented incident in 2010 was followed by repeated disclosures from Emani herself in 2012, concerns from extended family in 2013, and a direct report about her physical appearance just weeks before the end. Each time, the response proved insufficient to change her trajectory. The consistent pattern of returning her to the same environment without sustained intervention allowed the situation to become more serious over time, rather than being interrupted when earlier opportunities for help were still available. Georgia's Division of Family and Children Services, DFCS, is the primary state agency tasked with receiving reports of child abuse and neglect, investigating those reports, assessing risk, and determining what protective actions are necessary. The system is intended to track information over time so that repeated or escalating concerns about the same child lead to stronger and more coordinated intervention. In Emani Moss's case, this coordination did not occur effectively across multiple years and multiple reports. The first major documented incident occurred in March 2010, when Emani was 6 years old. After her stepmother was arrested for physically harming her, DFCS became involved in the case. Tiffany Moss pleaded guilty under Georgia's first offender program and received 5 years of probation along with requirements to complete parenting classes. During this period, Emani was placed with her paternal grandmother and showed noticeable improvement in school and emotional well-being. However, once the formal legal requirements were completed, Emani was returned to her father's custody in the fall of 2010. Her grandmother's attempts to retain custody were unsuccessful. The agency treated the case as resolved after the procedural steps were fulfilled, without putting in place ongoing monitoring or additional protective safeguards for a child who had already experienced substantiated harm in the home. In July 2012, Emani ran away on 2 separate occasions. She disclosed to police officers and the apartment manager that she had been tied to a chair with belts and placed in a cold shower. Police documented the reports and notified DFCS. One officer took steps to bring the matter before a juvenile court judge. Despite these actions, Emani was returned to the same household. The reports were largely investigated as individual incidents rather than being connected to the existing record from 2010. No removal from the home or intensive protective plan was implemented. By 2013, Emani's father and stepmother decided to remove her from public school and homeschool her instead. This decision significantly reduced her regular contact with teachers and school staff, the very people who had previously noticed and reported concerns about her safety. When Emani's aunt contacted DFCS to express worry about the homeschooling plan, the agency did not conduct an assessment or establish alternative oversight mechanisms. On August 6, 2013, just 2 months before Emani's death, DFCS received an anonymous tip stating that Emani was being neglected and appeared thin. The agency did not carry out an effective home visit or thorough follow-up assessment at that time. This represented one of the final clear opportunities for intervention before the situation became irreversible. Throughout these years, DFCS and partner agencies processed reports largely as separate events rather than as part of a cumulative pattern of risk. The 2010 case established a precedent of returning the child home once formal requirements were met. Subsequent reports did not trigger a more urgent or connected response that incorporated the full history of concerns. While documentation and procedural steps were completed, they did not result in sustained effective protection for Emani over time. The system map. in this case shows a persistent gap between possessing information about a child at risk and acting on that information with the level of urgency and coordination required to keep her safe. At the center of Emani Moss's story lies a profound betrayal by the two adults who should have protected her most, her stepmother and her biological father. While many people and institutions failed Emani over the years, the deepest wound came from within her own home, where the people responsible for her care chose resentment and inaction over love and protection. Tiffany Moss, Emani's stepmother, viewed the child as an unwelcome presence in her life. Prosecutors described how Tiffany saw Emani as nothing, a nuisance, ugly, a pain, disposable, trash. She treated her own biological children with care and attention, ensuring they were fed, clothed, and looked after. Emani, however, was deliberately isolated, denied food, and confined to her bedroom for weeks as her condition deteriorated. Tiffany's resentment toward her stepdaughter appeared rooted in the fact that Emani was not her own child, a parental example of the so-called Cinderella effect, in which step-parents sometimes direct hostility toward non-biological children in the household. After Emani's death, Tiffany pushed to hide the body and maintain the appearance of a normal family, prioritizing her own freedom and the preservation of her household over any acknowledgement of what had happened to the child in her care. Emani Moss, Emani's biological father, also failed his daughter in fundamental ways. He worked long hours at 2 jobs and was frequently absent from the home. He was aware of the earlier abuse that had occurred in 2010, yet he chose to fight for custody and bring Emani back into an environment where she had already been harmed.
Said that she and the other child that, and you say a bully, was there a child that was difficult in the class and had trouble being friends with any of the students?
Yes, yes.
And by that, did Emani actually have an incident with her while she was in your classroom? Or just shouting?
No, not an incident. I mean, I think the child was mean to her and she would just keep trying to be nice and maybe she would get ignored or whatever, but she just always kept trying. She always wanted to help people.
Were you aware if Emani had any siblings?
Yes, she adored her little brother. She would light up, her face would light up. She would talk about him and she would tell me like all the cute little things because he was, I think about 2, he was a toddler at the time.
In the final days of Emani's life, on October 24th, 2013, Emani came home and found his daughter in the bathtub, shaking uncontrollably with her eyes rolling back what he believed was a seizure.
Well, let me go back. When we had the incident where she spanked Emani in 2010, we had to take a class. I took it called the fatherhood program, and I think she had to take anger management, and then we had in-home counseling. Because at the time I was not aware of the other form of discipline, because I grew up from the old school. You got a spanking, and that was it.
So you learned about other forms of discipline.
But at the time I didn't know, but spanking and.
So after 2010, did you decide that you were going to use the other forms of discipline other than spanking?
Yes.
And do you know whether or not Tiffany did that too?
Yes, best of my knowledge, I think she did.
All right. And so you moved did you say in September of 2013?
Yeah.
To the apartment?
Yes, sir.
Where did you live? Did you ever live with your mother?
Yes, that was, you talking about me and Tiffany or just?
You and Tiffany?
Instead of calling for emergency medical help, he removed her from the tub and placed her on a mattress in her bedroom. He later told detectives that he knew at that point she was beyond repair. Over the next several days, as Emani lay dying alone in her own waste, a man continued to go to work and returned home each day without seeking outside intervention. After her death, he participated in the attempt to burn her body and initially gave false statements to police. The betrayal Emani experienced was not only one of active harm, but also one of profound neglect and complicity. Her stepmother actively caused her suffering, while her father, the one person biologically and legally responsible for her safety, stood by and allowed it to happen. Emani was left without an advocate inside her own home. The adults who shared a roof with her chose at critical moments to protect themselves and each other rather than the vulnerable child in their care. This betrayal cut deeper than the failures of outside agencies. While DFCS, police and schools had opportunities to intervene and did not act decisively, it was the people closest to Emani who had the most direct power to protect her on a daily basis. Instead, she was left to endure isolation, hunger, and ultimately death while the adults around her continued their normal routines. The contrast between how Tiffany cared for her own children and how she treated Emani made the betrayal even more stark. Emani was not simply neglected. She was singled out for different treatment within the same household. The core of this tragedy rests in these broken relationships. A stepmother who saw her as disposable, and a father who failed to shield her from harm left Emani without the most basic protection a child should be able to expect from the adults in her life. That betrayal, more than any other failure in the case, is what ultimately cost Emani her life. The last realistic window to save Emani Moss closed on October 24, 2013. On that evening, her father, Emani Moss, returned home from work and found his 10-year-old daughter in a state of medical distress that demanded immediate action. Emani discovered Emani in the bathtub, shaking uncontrollably as if experiencing a seizure, with her eyes rolling back. She was unresponsive and clearly in serious trouble. Instead of calling 911 or rushing her to a hospital, Emani removed her from the tub and placed her on a mattress or blanket on the floor of her bedroom. He later told detectives that he tried to feed her, but was unsuccessful. At that moment, he reportedly knew something was terribly wrong, and that his daughter was in grave condition. Over the next several days, Emani remained in that room, too weak to move or control her bodily functions. She lay alone in her own waste while the rest of the household continued with normal activities. Her stepmother watched television and cooked meals for the other children. Her father went to work each day and returned home. No one called for medical help. No one sought emergency assistance. Emani was left to deteriorate in isolation, inside the very home where she should have been protected and cared for. She died on October 28, 2013, several days after being found in the bathtub. By then, she had been without proper food or medical attention for an extended period. The opportunity to intervene on October 24th, when Emani found her in clear medical distress, had passed without any action that could have changed the outcome. This was the final mischance. At that point, Emani was still alive. She was in her father's presence, and he recognized that she was beyond his ability to help on his own. Yet, instead of seeking professional medical care, he chose to keep her in the home and maintain secrecy. That decision sealed her fate. The hours and days that followed were not spent trying to save her life, but in allowing her condition to worsen until it was too late. The final mischance, on October 24th, stands as one of the most painful aspects of this case. It was a moment when an adult directly responsible for Emani's well-being had both the knowledge that she was in danger and the opportunity to act. Instead of choosing intervention, he chose inaction. That choice meant Emani would spend her last days alone, suffering and without any possibility of rescue. This moment also highlights how earlier failures had already narrowed the options. By the time Emani found her in the bathtub, Emani had already endured weeks of isolation and deprivation. The cumulative effect of previous missed interventions had left her in an extremely vulnerable state. When the final opportunity arrived, the adults in the home were no longer in a position to easily reverse what had been done or left undone over the preceding period. The final missed chance on October 24, 2013, was the point at which Emani's survival still remained possible, but the choice made in that moment ensured that possibility would never be realized. After Emani died on October 28, 2013, her father and stepmother kept her body inside the apartment for several days. They discussed various ways to dispose of it, including burying her or reporting her as a runaway to avoid detection. Instead, they decided to attempt to burn the body in order to destroy evidence of what had happened to her. Emani Moss went to a Walmart and purchased a galvanized metal trash can, trash bags, charcoal, and lighter fluid. On Halloween night, he and Tiffany loaded Emani's body, which had already begun to stiffen with rigor mortis, into their vehicle, along with their 2 young children. They drove to a secluded wooded area and placed the body inside the trash can. They added charcoal briquettes and lighter fluid, then set it on fire. The body did not burn completely to ash as they had hoped. After several minutes, they extinguished the fire, placed the trash can back into the car, and returned home with the partially burned remains still inside. The following day, Emani went to work with his daughter's body, remaining in the trunk of the car. Eventually, after speaking with a friend who urged him to do the right thing, he decided to contact the police. In the early morning hours of November 2nd, 2013, around 4 a.m., Emani called 911. He told the dispatcher that his daughter was dead and directed officers to a metal trash can sitting in the grass just outside their apartment complex. When police arrived and opened the trash can, they found a black garbage bag containing Emani's charred remains. She weighed only 32 pounds at the time of discovery. Initially, Emani told officers that Emani had accidentally ingested household chemicals and that he had panicked and tried to dispose of her body by burning it. Detectives quickly grew suspicious of his account due to the condition of the body and inconsistencies in his story. Later, during more intense questioning, Emani broke down emotionally and told a homicide detective, "I'm guilty. I killed my baby." Tiffany Moss, upon learning that police had been called, fled the apartment with the couple's 2 young children. She dropped them off at her mother's house before eventually turning herself in to authorities. Later that same day, both Emani and Tiffany were arrested and charged in connection with Emani's death in the attempt to conceal it. The discovery of Emani's body marked the end of the secrecy surrounding her final days and weeks. What had been hidden inside the apartment, her prolonged suffering, her death, and the desperate attempt to destroy her remains, was now exposed to law enforcement and would soon become a matter of public record. The immediate aftermath revealed not only the horrific physical condition of her body, but also the lengths to which the adults responsible for her care had gone in an effort to avoid accountability. This moment shifted the case from a private family matter into a full criminal investigation. The discovery of the body in the trash can, combined with Emani's eventual admission and the physical evidence of the attempted burning, set in motion the legal proceedings that would unfold over the following years. Emani Moss accepted a plea deal in June 2015. He pleaded guilty to felony murder and concealing the death of another. In exchange for agreeing to testify against his wife at her trial, he avoided facing the death penalty himself and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus 10 additional years. Tiffany Moss's death penalty trial began in April 2019. In a highly unusual move, she chose to represent herself rather than accept court-appointed attorneys. Throughout the trial, she delivered no opening statement, did not cross-examine any of the state's witnesses, called no witnesses on her own behalf, and made no closing argument to the jury. After hearing testimony from 18 witnesses, including Emani Moss and medical experts, the jury convicted Tiffany on all counts malice murder, 2 counts of felony murder, 2 counts of first-degree cruelty to children, and concealing the death of another in less than 3 hours of deliberation. On May 1st, 2019, the jury recommended the death penalty. Gwinnett County Superior Court Judge George Hutchinson sentenced Tiffany Moss to death by lethal injection, plus 20 years. She became Georgia's only female death row inmate at the time and remains incarcerated at Arundel State Prison while her appeals continue. The case received widespread national and international media coverage. The discovery of a 10-year-old girl's burned body in a trash can, combined with the documented history of multiple ignored warnings over several years, shocked the public and drew intense scrutiny to both the crime and the child welfare system. News outlets across the country followed the trial closely, highlighting the brutality of what Emani had endured and the repeated failures by agencies to protect her. Emani's grandmother, Emani Moss, spoke publicly in the aftermath of the verdict and sentencing. She expressed continued anger toward DFCS for failing to act on multiple reports and warning signs despite clear evidence of risk. She also stated that she had forgiven her son for his role in the tragedy, but continued to mourn the loss of her granddaughter, whom she remembered as a sweet, loving, and gentle child. The public reaction was one of profound horror and outrage. Many people questioned how a child could suffer years of documented abuse and neglect without effective intervention from the very agencies responsible for her safety. The case prompted reviews of child welfare practices in Georgia and renewed public discussion about the need for stronger protections for vulnerable children in similar situations. For many observers, the swift conviction and death sentence brought a measure of accountability, though nothing could undo the years of suffering Emani had endured or bring her back. The case stood as a stark and lasting reminder of what can happen when warning signs are not taken seriously and when systems fail to act decisively. On behalf of a child at risk, Emani Moss did not die because no one knew she was in trouble. She died because the people and institutions who knew about the danger surrounding her did not act with the urgency that a child's life requires. Teachers saw the bruises and injuries in 2010. Police took reports in 2012 when she ran away and described being tied up with belts and put in cold showers. DFCS received multiple complaints over several years, including an anonymous tip just 2 months before her death warning that she appeared thin and neglected. A grandmother fought for custody after seeing the changes in her granddaughter. A child herself ran away and told adults exactly what was happening to her. None of these warnings was enough to remove her from the house where she was being starved, isolated, and ultimately killed. When we treat child protective work primarily as paperwork, procedures, and checkboxes instead of urgent life and death intervention, children like Emani pay the ultimate price. The system did not fail Emani because it lacked information. It failed because it did not treat the information it already had as an emergency that demanded immediate and decisive protective action. Emani Moss was failed both by the adults who should have loved and protected her and by the institutions that existed specifically to keep children safe. Her death was preventable. That reality is the wound that remains. Every adult who works with or encounters children showing signs of abuse or severe neglect carries a responsibility. "I didn't know the full story," or "we followed procedure," are not acceptable excuses when clear warning signs accumulate over months and years without meaningful intervention. We must judge child welfare systems not by whether forms were completed or procedures were technically followed, but by whether children are actually safer as a result of their involvement. When a child dies after multiple documented warnings have been received and recorded, the system has failed in its most fundamental duty. Emani's case stands as a permanent reminder that good intentions and completed paperwork are never enough on their own. Children need adults and institutions willing to act with courage, clarity, and urgency when they are in danger. The question this case ultimately leaves us with is not only what happened to Emani Moss, but what we as a society are willing to change so that no other child is left depending on adults and systems that look away. Emani Moss's death prompted reviews and reforms within Georgia's Division of Family and Children Services. Advocates and lawmakers pointed to the pattern of returning children to known dangerous environments after formal requirements were met, and the failure to connect multiple separate reports into a coherent picture of escalating risk. While some specific policy adjustments followed the case, the broader lessons remain relevant for child welfare systems everywhere. A prior substantiated finding of abuse or neglect against a caregiver should trigger heightened and ongoing scrutiny. not simply a quick return to the status quo once parenting classes or probation requirements are completed. When a child has already been harmed in the home, the system should require clear evidence that the environment has genuinely improved before returning the child, rather than assuming the danger has passed because paperwork has been filed. Disclosures made by the child herself, especially repeated runaways accompanied by specific descriptions of mistreatment, must be treated as serious red flags requiring immediate protective consideration rather than routine investigation handled in isolation. A child who runs away multiple times and describes being tied up or subjected to harsh treatment is sending an urgent message that should not be minimized or dismissed. Isolation tactics used by potential abusers, such as suddenly removing a child from school or limiting contact with extended family members who have expressed concern, should themselves raise alarms and prompt welfare checks rather than being accepted without further inquiry. When a child suddenly disappears from the view of teachers and other mandated reporters, that change in circumstances can itself be a significant warning sign. Concerns from any source that a child appears thin, is not thriving, or shows signs of distress should trigger a proper in-person assessment, rather than being set aside for procedural or administrative reasons. A noticeable decline in a child's physical condition, especially when previous reports of concern already exist, is not a minor detail. It can be evidence of serious and ongoing harm that requires immediate attention. Reforms written on paper have little meaning if caseworkers remain under-resourced, if family preservation is prioritized over child safety by default, or if completing required procedures becomes an acceptable defense when a child dies. Emani's case stands as a permanent reminder that the true measure of any child welfare system is not the elegance of its procedures or the number of forms completed, but whether the children it is charged with protecting are actually safe and alive. Emani Gabrielle Moss was not trash. She was not disposable. She was a little girl who hummed while she colored, who made beaded keychains for her grandmother, who smiled at school because it felt safe, and who wanted to be friends with everyone. She deserved adults who would fight for her. She deserved a system that treated her repeated cries for help as the emergency they were. She deserved to grow up. Instead, she was failed by the people who should have loved her and by the institutions that existed to protect her. Her death was preventable. That is the wound that remains. We remember her not by the horror of how she died, but by the light of who she was, a gentle, singing, helpful child who should still be here. Her grandmother still carries the keychain. We should carry the lesson. If this story has moved you, do not let it end with outrage. Turn it into action. If you work with children or suspect abuse or neglect, report it immediately to your local child protective services. Trust your instincts. One report can save a life. Support policies and funding that strengthen child welfare systems. Better pay and training for case workers, reduced caseloads, and a genuine shift from family preservation at all costs to child safety first. Share Emani's story responsibly. Her memory deserves to drive change, not just clicks. Emani Moss ran out of second chances. The next child does not have to. The question is whether we will learn from the warnings she left behind. Thank you for watching. Honor her by protecting the children around you.